Nobody has ever needed a pep talk to check a text message. Nobody hits snooze on Instagram. But set a 5 in the morning alarm for the gym and suddenly your own brain turns into your worst enemy. That is not laziness. That is a wiring problem, and it is fixable. Somewhere between a 1990s primate lab and that glowing rectangle in your pocket, science found the exact biological switch deciding whether your brain treats hard work like a threat or the best part of your day. Here is the part that makes zero sense. You can sit still for 6 straight hours binge watching a show you barely even like. Zero willpower required. But ask that exact same brain to sit still for 20 minutes with a textbook or a spreadsheet, and it suddenly demands a snack break, a trip to the bathroom, and a full inventory of your group chat. Think about that paradox for a second. Every single one of your ancestors survived by doing hard, physically brutal things. Walking for miles in freezing rain to find water. Tracking an animal through the brush for 12 hours with no guarantee of a kill. Effort was not an option you weighed over a morning coffee. Effort was the whole game. So if human evolution spent hundreds of thousands of years sharpening your brain into an unstoppable survival machine, why does that same brain treat a 30-minute workout like a literal physical attack? Why does it treat an endless scroll of strangers' vacation photos like the safest place on Earth? That is the anomaly. A brain brilliantly built by hard work now actively avoids it. Either human biology contains a massive design error, which seems wildly unlikely given everything else your body pulls off without you thinking, or something else is going on. Something got trained, and it happened quietly, without your permission, one chemical hit at a time. You are sitting in the middle of a modern American environment designed to hack your biology. You are exhausted after a 9-to-5 job, sitting in highway traffic, feeling like you have zero discipline left. But your discipline is not broken, it is just confused. Which sounds simple until you realize the chemical responsible for your ambition has been entirely misunderstood. In the early 1990s, neuroscientist Wolfram Schultz recorded individual brain cells inside a monkey waiting for a small squirt of apple juice. The assumption at the time was straightforward. Dopamine is the pleasure chemical, so it should fire the exact moment the monkey tastes the juice. And at first, it did. Then, Schultz added a warning light just before the juice. As the monkey learned that the light meant juice was coming, the massive dopamine burst stopped waiting for the juice. It moved earlier in time, firing the exact second the light appeared. When he turned the light on but delivered no juice, the dopamine neurons plunged below their normal baseline. The brain registered a disappointment in real time. Dopamine was never about pleasure. It is about prediction. It is a forecasting machine. It fires hardest when reality beats your expectations and crashes when reality falls short. That is why your phone is so impossibly hard to put down at midnight. You never know if the next swipe brings something boring or brilliant, so your brain fires that anticipation signal hundreds of times a day. Recent surveys put the average American at checking their phone roughly once every 5 minutes they are awake. That is not weak willpower. That is a prediction error loop running exactly the way it did inside Schultz's monkey. Long before modern neuroscience existed, ancient civilizations figured out this exact biological rule through raw human experience. Stoic philosophers in ancient Rome deliberately practiced short stretches of sleeping on cold floors and eating stale bread to train the mind to stop flinching at discomfort. Monastic traditions in Buddhism built entire routines around fixed hours of fasting and meditation. Fasting traditions inside Judaism, Christianity, and Islam all follow a nearly identical structure. Set times, set durations, done entirely on purpose. None of those ancient traditions had the word dopamine, but every one of them discovered that the human brain does not actually crave comfort, it craves a pattern it can trust. Here is what almost everyone believes about discipline. Willpower works like a phone battery. You wake up with a full charge, use a little to avoid office donuts, use more for a tough client, and by 9 at night, you have nothing left to say no to the couch. It is called ego depletion, repeated in textbooks for decades. Except in 2010, researchers found something hiding out of plain sight inside that theory. People only ran out of willpower if they already believed willpower was a limited resource. The people who did not hold that belief simply did not show the same crash. Same human brain, completely different outcome based entirely on what the person expected from themselves. When modern researchers tried to replicate those depletion studies with massive, tightly controlled tests, the famous effect essentially vanished. The tidy story you were sold about an empty willpower tank by dinner is standing on shaky scientific ground. This is also where the internet trend of dopamine detoxing gets human biology backward. You cannot fast from dopamine. It's a neurotransmitter running constantly in the background of a living brain, whether you sit in total silence or scroll for 3 hours. The real fix was never deprivation. It was breaking one unreliable habit loop and feeding your prediction engine cleaner data. Now, stack a second massive head fake right on top of that. Think of the Marshmallow Test, the most famous psychology experiment of the 20th century. 4-year-olds who could wait 15 minutes for a second marshmallow supposedly grew up more successful, but when researchers ran it again with a larger, more representative group of children, the famous link between a child's willpower and adult success completely disappeared once family income and home environment were accounted for. Kids from less stable households grabbed the marshmallow fast, not because their discipline was broken, but because their brain's prediction engine had already learned that a promised reward tomorrow does not always show up. The Marshmallow Test was never testing willpower. It was testing trust. And trust is exactly what the dopamine system is built to track. So here is where all these threads tie together. Dopamine does not reward pleasure. It rewards accurate prediction. Willpower is not a draining battery. It is a belief that shapes whether effort feels possible. And discipline is not a genetic trait. It is a track record. Your brain asks one quiet question every time you face something hard. Has effort paid off for me before? If yes, effort feels like anticipation instead of dread. If no, your brain protects you from disappointment by refusing to let you try. That is an extraordinarily brilliant survival mechanism. A system that recalibrates expectations based on lived evidence is a system built to learn. Consider what a setup like that requires. A purely mechanical process would not care what you believed about it, but your nervous system visibly, chemically responds to belief, to ritual, and to trust built slowly over time. The exact same raw ingredients spiritual traditions have used for thousands of years to shape human character. That staggering overlap between hard neuroscience and ancient wisdom does not show up by accident. The writer of Hebrews describes discipline as something painful in the present that quietly produces peace later. The Bhagavad Gita teaches acting fully without fixating on the immediate outcome. Stoics described obstacles as the raw material the path is built from. Different centuries, different continents, yet every single one described the exact same biological mechanism a lab in Switzerland mapped with wires. A mind that learns to trust the process experiences the process itself as the ultimate reward. Is it an accident that the chemical signal for motivation is built entirely around faith, patience, and delayed truth? Or is that a little too elegant to just be a random coincidence of evolutionary chemistry? Science cannot settle that question for you, but it is worth sitting with. Back here in your actual daily life, stuck in rush hour traffic, staring at a student loan statement, or scrolling at 2 in the morning, this changes something real. Discipline was never about gritting your teeth harder than everyone else. It is about proof. Every single time you do the hard thing and it actually pays off, you hand your prediction engine one more piece of hard evidence that effort is worth it. The burned-out commuter dreading a 6 a.m. alarm does not need to be a hero for one afternoon. They need small, reliable proof stacked day after day. Do that until your brain stops treating the hard thing like a threat and starts treating it like the moment right before something good happens. Do it enough times at the same time, and human biology shifts. The dopamine spike that used to show up only when your workout ended starts creeping earlier. Eventually, it shows up when you tie your shoes. That is not motivation. That is the exact mechanism that trained you to crave your phone, now pointed at something that actually builds your life. Your daily grind, the heavy commute, the midnight doom scroll, none of it was about laziness. It was about which habits your brain learns to trust, and that is a system you can retrain, on purpose, starting tomorrow morning. Here is the actual hack to rewrite the code. Do not try to overhaul your entire life tomorrow morning. Pick one intensely small discipline, 10 push-ups, reading 2 pages of a book, making your bed the second your feet hit the floor. Do it at the exact same time in the exact same place every single day for 2 weeks straight. No exceptions. You are not building physical intensity. You are building biological proof. You are teaching your dopamine system that this specific cue reliably leads to a payoff, moving the reward signal from the finish line back to the starting line. What is one specific thing that used to feel like pure, miserable discipline for you that eventually turned into something you actually crave today? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe